You're listening to the Polka Dot Podcast, a show by a mom for moms and lovers of all things Disney. Hi, I'm Leslie. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Polka Dot Podcast. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Polka Dot Podcast. I'm Leslie, and joining me again today is my husband, Andrew.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about a Disney Babymoon.
A Disney Babymoon.
And how, yes, Disney World is in the hot and humid climate of Orlando, Florida.
Most of the time.
It covers a lot of space, which means there's a lot of walking. It's expensive. So for these good reasons, you probably wouldn't be quick to schedule a Babymoon for a relaxing trip at Disney World.
Wouldn't be your first thought.
No. But we did it. Well, I was expecting our second child. At the beginning of my second trimester, Andrew called me on his way to work and said, I need a break. I needed a break. And I knew, this being our second time around, that if we were going to take a Babymoon, it would be better to do it in the second trimester, because we went at the beginning of my third trimester during my first pregnancy to the beach, and I had such a bad case of, it's not sciatica, but it's something similar where my SI joint and my hip locks up, and it was very painful and hard to walk. So I just knew I'd probably have that again, so we would have to take a Babymoon quickly. So this was the start of the second trimester, and surprisingly, you suggested first, let's go to Disney World.
I don't remember that.
I did.
I think that's false.
Because, well, that's how I choose to remember it. So anyway, so he said, want to go to Disney World? And I said, yes, absolutely. And I had the trip booked within a few hours, and it was 60 days out. So that means, since we were staying on property, I booked everything from the airfare down to the fast passes and dining reservations within the next 4 hours.
I think my thought process might have been, it would be nice to go as a couple for a change, because you can really go at your own pace. You can go faster. You can see more things.
Yeah, and that suits me. I'll go with, in any situation, to Disney World. But we had only been to Disney World with family members, where you have to give and take in your planning process. And we had been to Disneyland twice as a couple, but that was very early on, and never to Disney World as a couple.
And it's different.
Yeah. So, but this was going to be a different experience. While I had recently, the year before, I went with my mom and our first child, who was almost 2.5. Andrew didn't go to that trip, but I had gained some experience of going at a slower pace with someone who just couldn't be out all day and night, walking all day and night. So this time that person was me. I couldn't be out. Well, I could be out, but I couldn't walk all day and night because of my hip and because of the weight of my belly. Mm-hmm. So I chose to rent a scooter.
A rascal.
A rascal?
That's what they call them.
What?
The old folks use the rascal.
For a scooter? Mm-hmm. I've never...
It's a brand.
Now, they call it, is it ECV or EVC? I always get the letters mixed up.
It just saves your feet.
Okay. So anyway, on today's episode, I wanted to talk about 5 tips or considerations for you to take and have a happy, successful Babymoon at Walt Disney World. Okay, here we go.
I'm ready.
Okay, so number 1, I already alluded to it. One of the things to consider is there's a lot of walking at Walt Disney World. I think we clocked over 20,000 steps a day.
I had just gotten my Fitbit, and I think we had days of 18,000 and 20,000.
Yeah, and so, like I said, being pregnant, that's a lot of walking for anybody, let alone someone who has a hip issue and a baby bump. So we stayed at Port Orleans Riverside.
I loved it.
Which was formerly known as Dixie Landings. So this was my third time staying at that resort. It is a really big resort. It might be the largest footprint of any of the Disney World resorts. So having a scooter isn't a bad idea if you're impaired.
It's a great idea.
Well, what I will say is, around that resort, the plus side, it's a large resort, and I would have probably been wiped out by the time we got to the park.
No doubt.
And it made it a lot easier for me to take a trip after we got home late at night to go all the way down to the neighboring resort, what's it called, the French Quarter, to get a pack of their beignets for a snack credit.
Was that a pleasant surprise?
And carry those back. You get one snack credit and you get beignets.
This is one snack And if I recall, I picture it being one of those larger takeout styrofoam containers.
It was.
Full of those.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
And now I think they have them shaped as Mickey heads.
Of course, then I felt like I had to eat all of them, which was problematic.
Well, we saved some for the morning, but they're really best eaten right away when they're warm. So anyway, the walk, there's a sidewalk that goes down the canal that they've built that you can take the ferry boat to Disney Springs from this resort. It's a really tranquil, quiet, long walk, but I didn't do the walk. I took the scooter, and that was great. The only thing I will say about having a scooter at this particular resort, and I'm sure this is not the only resort like it, is the way the resort is designed is if you are in a wheelchair or you have a stroller or you're on electric scooter, you have to go to the ramp. There might be, 2 points of entry for ramps, and it's typically like in the center of the building. And you have to go up the ramp. Now, we were on the second floor, so we had to go up the ramp, fit it into the little elevator, and then wind it in and out of the pathway around the outside. Because the access to the rooms are on the outside. And they're not just straight walkways. They wind in and out, making all those turns. So it's a little tedious. It takes extra time. So if you do this and you stay at a resort like Riverside, you have to build in extra time to get to the park. One other thing about renting strollers and scooters, especially, they can be a little tough to get on and off the buses that transport you from the hotels to the parks. You can fit, I believe it's 2 scooters per bus. The positive side is you get to jump the line. So if you're the first scooter in line, you're going to get on that next bus.
And the bus driver does all the work for you, right?
Yeah, well, it depends on the bus driver. Sometimes they have everyone else in line wait. They get you on first. Sometimes you drive it up the ramp yourself and try to parallel park. Sometimes if you can get up out of your chair or your scooter, sometimes they ask you to do that and the driver prefers to park it themselves.
But just for clarification, because the word parallel park makes many people panic.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal.
It wasn't that big of a deal, but it can be a little, again, just a little bit tedious. But it also comes with the benefit of jumping the line. So
well, yeah, and you're looking at all day comfort versus 5 minutes to get on the bus.
Yes. So number 2, review the list of rides not recommended for pregnant women that's available on Walt Disney World's website. Some of the rides might surprise you. Yes, of course, they're not going to recommend that you go on Space Mountain if you're pregnant. I was surprised, though, that even the safari ride at Animal Kingdom was listed as being one of those rides that you can't go on if you're pregnant because it's really bumpy, and I don't think you notice that unless you have a baby bouncing around in your stomach.
Yeah, that seems kind of lame to me. I think it's an attorney getting involved with something.
Maybe, but I can tell you if you're far along, you're not going to want to encounter bumps. Okay. And that's something only a woman who's been pregnant would understand.
I won't refute it yet.
I would just say look for that ahead of time because if you have your heart, especially for people who don't go to Disney World often, if you want to go to Disney and you have your heart set on trying everything under the sun that's available and getting your money's worth, then maybe a Babymoon at Disney is not for you. If you go and you don't like thrill rides or you just want to enjoy all the many variety of things to do at Disney and thrill rides isn't your top priority, then I hope you would consider it. Number 3, Walt Disney World is a mecca for pregnant women who are hungry and have weird random cravings. So that's not really a tip, but what I would say to turn this into a tip is if you go to Epcot, consider not making a dining reservation, at least for one of your days. We had saved up our snack credits and we used them just walking around the World Showcase. I think we shared every snack that we got.
What
and
was
we
the
used
bread?
5.
What was the bread called?
The school bread with the custard.
Was that
and the coconut?
Which
Norway.
Country? Norway.
Now that is a classic staple of Norway. It's been there for a long time. But that was the first time I had ever tried it.
It was good.
Yeah. So every time I go to Epcot, I am always compelled to get one of those almond pastries from the France Pavilion. I love them. It's one of those things that I feel, when you go to Magic Kingdom, I always have to get a Dole Whip. I feel incomplete if I don't do it because it's right there within reach.
Boy, you're really right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Epcot is definitely the park to go for a pregnant woman who's having cravings.
For sure. And you don't need to sit and spend, $62 on one meal. I would rather save my snack credits if you're doing the dining plan or pay out of pocket for an assortment of snacks. Because it's not like you're just getting a bunch of nachos and potato chips as snacks. You would use your snack credit on things that otherwise might cost you $6, $7, $8 a pop for things that really are, at the very least, appetizers, if not, when you put them together, a full hearty meal.
Do you think that's common even for people who've gone several times, the misunderstanding of what is considered a snack?
Well, there's a range of things. All the prepackaged foods that they sell at the gift shops, like the popcorn and
Cotton
pretzels,
and
they don't have goldfish, but they have goldfish-like crackers that are shaped like Mickey heads. You can use a snack credit on that. I personally wouldn't. I used to before I realized the finances of that.
Yeah.
Is that you want to maximize every single meal credit and snack credit you can. I would not advise spending it on a bottle of water, because if you're thirsty for water, you can either get a free cup of water or take your refillable mug and get water at any quick service restaurant. If you can find a snack that's priced $6 or above, you're making good use.
So help me remember, what were some of the other snacks we had in Epcot?
So some of the favorite snacks that we ate at Epcot that spring to my mind, I've already said the school bread in Norway, the almond pastry in France, but really there are a ton of pastries in France that I'd love to try if I weren't so caught up on this almond pastry. We had the potato pancake in Germany, which actually I was a little disappointed by. We went to a German restaurant in Washington, D.C. years ago, and I thought that their potato pancakes tasted a lot better. It was kind of more garlicky.
It was.
And it just wasn't what I was expecting, but that's just obviously my personal
There was
preference.
something about the texture, too, I remember being disappointed by.
It was just different.
Could have just been a bad day for that.
I don't know. Either that or it's just different. For all I know, maybe theirs is more authentic than the one we had in D.C. I have no idea. But poutine was another one we tried for the first time. We did the traditional gravy and cheese chunks over fries, and you get that in Canada. You can also get it. There's a poutine cart in Disney Springs, and they have all kinds of, they change out the flavors seasonally, but they also have the classic poutine.
Yeah, so save your appetite for goldfish and chips and bottled water for when you get home.
Number 4, one of the joys of pregnancy is that you have to go to the bathroom all the time. And when you go on vacation, sometimes it can be hard to find a bathroom or find a clean bathroom, depending on where you are. But Disney has a ton of them readily accessible in all areas of the park. But the difference is they're clean. By and large, they're pretty clean compared to the horrible bathrooms or other places where thousands of people flock to in a day. I know that sounds like a minor thing, but when you have to go literally every 30 to 60 minutes, it's something to consider. So if you're taking 20,000 steps as a pregnant woman at Walt Disney World and you're not renting a scooter, you may need a good amount of downtime to prop your feet up and rest. There are a ton of ways to do that and still be entertained and get your money's worth if you're at Walt Disney World. So let's talk about some of those things that you can do besides walking from attraction to attraction. I'll list a few. You can take a day at the pool. You can sign up for art classes or cake decorating classes at Amorette's at Disney Springs. They have free movie nights on the lawn at every single resort. There are restaurant tours you can take.
Don't forget the shows that are at the parks. In the various theaters.
Absolutely. You can sit in a air-conditioned theater at every single park. There are multiple shows.
And if you're feeling nostalgic and need to get off of your feet, what's the best ride there is at Magic Kingdom?
Carousel of Progress.
Carousel of Progress.
You like that one. I'm glad you do.
Strangely, I do. It needs updated.
I don't think it's... Well, the last scene has been updated many times, and I think it's made it a little confusing because on the one hand, you see elements of the 70s, you see 80s, you see 90s, and I think they talk in the script, they talk about it being today. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it's a little mishmashed.
Yes. So I feel like they should either just leave it in the 70s or 80s, or actually update it and put them in clothes that people would wear today.
Yeah.
Although I think he has a mustache, and mustaches have come back.
Maybe they could get a new building and make more space for additional decades.
Walt had designed that ride for the World's Fair. So I don't think that they're going to, with the exception of updating it cosmetically. Well, no, they have changed the song. They have changed the script. I think the Sherman Brothers wrote either the song that they have now. It started with that song, then it went to Now is the Time, Now is the Best Time, and then they went back to It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow.
That's the one now?
Yeah.
Right.
I think, I believe I read that was the original one, which I didn't know. From when I can remember first going on that ride in the 80s, I believe at that time it was the other one.
Anyway, dozens and dozens of things to do. There's the train at Magic Kingdom. There's tons of things.
You can rent boats yourself and either drive them down the canals around the resorts.
When you think about truly, literally getting your feet up, which resort would be best? Like the Beach and Yacht Club, Coronado Springs? If you think about where there's going to be lounging areas with ottomans and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, really, any of the resorts with great pools. For me, personally, the Beach and Yacht Club is best because if I wanted to plan to have relaxing down days at the resort where I'm just lounging at the pool, hands down, the Beach and Yacht Club would be my first pick personally because they have Stormalong Bay. I mean, their pool is so great, they named it. They named it Stormalong Bay. It centers around a shipwreck. You take the little windy stairs up to the top of the tower, and then the slide winds down through a bunch of plants. There's sand at the bottom of the pool. I'll probably talk about Stormalong Bay a lot of times. But if you're going to spend money on a deluxe resort, I couldn't recommend Beach and Yacht Club enough simply because of the pool. And you don't get to access and use the pool unless you stay there. For me, I'd be fine taking a day there and skipping the water parks.
Yeah.
Very relaxing. So that's a great place. But, some resorts also have more relaxing, a little quieter atmospheres, like the Grand Floridian is more upscale.
A little more pampering.
It's one of the resorts that actually has a spa as well. Not all of them do, but that one does. It also has great character dining. So you get a lot of experiences at the Grand Floridian without having to transport somewhere else. And it's a kind of a quieter, sleepier atmosphere, which may deter some people from staying there. But if you're looking for a quiet, relaxing day during your Walt Disney World trip, it would be good to stay there if you can.
Yeah, it is pretty low key.
So before we go, I wanted your perspective of this Babymoon. Did you feel like it was worth the money going to Walt Disney World when it definitely changed the pace?
We had only been with family, and that comes with a lot of chaos and a lot of extra planning and multiple strollers, and they want to buy everything in the store. So for me, I really enjoyed it. It was less frantic. Yes, you were limited a bit, but the scooter really just kind of erased that. So I really loved it from my perspective.
It was a short trip. We only went for 4 nights?
Yeah.
We only did 2 parks. We went for 4 nights. We stayed in an upgraded princess room at Port Orleans, which was nice. That was different. I had never seen that before. And we only went to Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Magic Kingdom again. Did we just do 1 day at Epcot? I think that's all it was.
Yes.
2 days at Magic Kingdom, 1 day at Epcot.
It was a packed day, though. We got a lot in.
Yeah.
I think we did the circle twice almost, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, did we? You mean the World Showcase?
Yeah.
At Epcot? And by the way, we went during the last week of April, which was definitely a roll of the dice because we have gone in the past the first week of May and it was super hot. It was definitely in the upper 90s. But this time when we went, it was in the 70s for the most part, high 70s, mid 70s. I mean, one day I even wore jeans. So we lucked out weather-wise, and I made sure all the spring breaks were over by the last week of April.
Yeah, it was a good move.
So we weren't packed in there with peak time for crowds. So if you're going at a slower pace and you want to be able to still pack in as much as you can, try not to go during peak season. So that rules out summer, holiday weekends, spring break, and certain weeks around the holidays.
Yep.
So what's left? There a lot of times that most people aren't taking vacation. September, certain weeks in January and February, and right after spring break. would be my recommendations. Now, by the way, there are other events that happen at spring break that helps increase the crowds and traffic around Disney World that you should know about. So go on their website and see what is planned for the calendars, when their marathons and half marathons are in the first quarter of the year. There might be school competitions. One time I went down with a chorus competition. So there were a ton of teenagers running around with few supervisors, which I'm guessing thrilled all the other guests in the parks and people staying at the same resorts as we were. I'm sure I was among them. So those are other things to consider if you're looking for lower crowds and a little less chaos. Okay, so anything else you want to add before we close?
That's a wrap.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Polka Dot Podcast. I'll be sharing some pictures of Andrew and my Babymoon to Walt Disney World. Thanks so much for listening.